Awful new video shows patients under attack at Western State Hospital, this time at the hands of staff members.
Como investigator John Humbert obtained the footage that's never been seen publicly until now. John?
Well, these few seconds don't define the work that goes on inside the 800-bed facility. They reveal dangers to both patients and staff. The stories and video give a perspective no one has seen before.
And I have problems with word order. I have problems with numbers, difficulties when I read, especially if I do anything quickly.
Kimberly Chadwick sits outside the grounds of Western State Hospital, thinking about her recovery, the trauma still raging inside her mind, her life before the violence, a jumble of memories and emotions.
It's nowhere near what I'm used to being able to do.
Chadwick isn't one of the patients at the mental hospital. She's one of their psychologists, sidelined 9 months ago when she was attacked by a patient at Western.
Pushed me back into the wall, and then he picked up the chair that was next to him and overhanded it into me. I think it was 12 stitches total, but split all the way to the bone.
Chadwick says it caused brain damage, confusion, and she still isn't able to perform her job of giving court testimony. She isn't alone.
I tore 2 ligaments in the shoulder.
She actually grabbed my hair over the top of my head.
I've had back surgery from a takedown. I've broken a couple fingers.
Story after story of nurses and security officers trying to stay safe on understaffed wards with growing tensions.
Constantly working short.
Sometimes the violence goes the other way, as seen in these newly released videos of 2 staff on patient attacks. March 2015, security attendant Fred Brown gets up and goes running after a patient's scuffle turns into a brawl. Staff put a spit mask on the patient, and Brown helped haul him into a private secured room. That's when court records and internal reports obtained by the Como investigators say Brown removed the mask and was spit on. That led to Brown holding down the patient with a knee on his chest and a finger on his throat. Then he nearly came to blows with colleagues trying to get him out of the room.
Good afternoon, Eric Trio for Mr. Brown.
Brown was charged with simple assault. His trial begins in June. A second video shows a patient come face-to-face with security staffer Zaldi Frago. He takes a swing at him. The 2 exchange blows, and the patient is taken down. In what a report called possible patient abuse, Frago appears to kick the downed patient. While many co-workers support Frago, the hospital did not. New CEO Cheryl Strange told us this is an extremely disturbing incident and unacceptable behavior by someone charged with caring for very vulnerable patients with mental illness. Western State Hospital patients have the right to safety, quality treatment, and at all times to be treated with dignity and respect. Frago was fired in March. Keeping cool with sometimes volatile patients can be a challenge.
They have a tendency to be unpredictable.
Elijah Sachs says it's innocent until proven guilty for Brown, Frago, and others. After suffering a torn rotator cuff, he fights to keep patients and staff safe.
Make sure all our workers go home in one piece every night. That's the goal.
Each one of these represents a staff person that's had an approved assault.
The union says assault reports dropped by nearly half last year. Workers tell us they don't want the hassle and stress of medical checks, employment paperwork, and more.
You're just going to have to live with it.
I'm going to get hurt. It's not going to matter. Why should I even bother?
So a lot of people make a conscious decision not to fill out assault paperwork. I know I'm guilty of it myself.
So the numbers don't reflect the reality, one where healing sick minds can lead to injury. And somehow, despite the pain, decades of giving can be worth it.
It's just one hell of a place to work. You have to really love the population. And I do.
Now, Western State is still negotiating with the federal government on how best to bring in an independent monitor for big reforms. The governor's budget called for 51 new nursing positions to help some of those staff shortfalls, but the hospital already can't find hires for 150 jobs. The tough task there continues. John Humbert, Como investigators.
Let's get my coffee ready.
It's another early start for nurse Candace Noble. Her daily battle against the darkness of mental illness takes patience and hopefully positivity.
Let's go potty, come on.
She's just one of 1,800 employees working inside Western State Hospital, simply trying to stay afloat.
Overwhelmed, we're overworked, we're tired, we're burned out. All right, Josie.
So Noble and her fellow nurses are taking their struggles to Olympia,
Right.
showing lawmakers what's really going on behind these gates. They're asking for more money, additional nurses, and better conditions.
What we're really focusing on today.
It is a little hard to stand up and say I'm proud to work there right now.
We can keep asking until somebody finally will speak to us.
It's been hard on us.
The nurses say mandatory overtime is common practice. Their workloads have spiked, and there's a backlog of mentally ill people waiting to be admitted. This at a time when both patients and staff are under attack.
I was fortunate with my assault that it was just a punch in the face and nothing more.
Noble says attacks like this are so commonplace, reporting them is pointless.
It's not worth going through the paperwork and the time off, and no, it's just better to just go on.
The good news, Washington records show assault rates against Western state staff are slowly declining, but there's bad news when it comes to patient-to-patient violence. Compared to other state mental hospital systems in the West, the numbers show Western has the highest rate of these attacks, higher than Oregon and Nevada, and nearly double the rate of California. Noble says help is needed to stop this.
We need better training. We need better ways to be able to deal with patients that are having a psychiatric crisis.
The numbers appear to back up the nurses' complaints about being short-staffed. Western ranks third in staff-to-patient ratios, ahead of only California. The Como investigators obtained some of these internal emails between leadership and some of the employees. They expose problems that go far beyond just staffing levels. In one exchange, several doctors asked for the chance to meet in person with federal inspectors to, quote, give our perspectives, positive and negative. Sources tell us that never happened. Doctors were actually barred from doing so. As a result, Western's chief of medical staff, Joe Weiner, resigned a week and a half ago, citing a loss of trust in leadership. In an email to me, Weiner elaborated on that, saying anything other than positive talk about Western, quote, would be interpreted as a violation of our code of conduct, and we would face disciplinary action. Yet another source described a toxic culture of fear that's pervasive in Western. So the struggles continue behind the scenes and on the front lines.
Embarrassing.
For Noble, it's time to come out of the shadows to shine a light on this hospital on the brink.
It's like a marathon. From the time I get there, from the time I leave, I run a marathon.
Breaking right now, authorities say these two patients who are considered to be dangerous with violent records have escaped from Western State Hospital. Tonight, authorities are trying to track these men down, and they're warning anyone who sees them to stay away.
Let's get right to Como's Joel Marino, who's live in Lakewood near Western State Hospital. Joel, how did this happen?
Well, they are looking into this. It sounds like a loose window is to blame. It has been 3 hours now since staff at this hospital first realized these men were missing. So pretty frightening information, but very important information to relay to the public right now. Police say these guys got about a 2-hour head start before their officers were notified to even begin searching. And we want to show you the photos of these fugitives right now. The two men, they are Anthony Garver and Mark Alexander Adams. We're told, as I said just a moment ago, that they slipped out through a loose window. Now, they were not armed when they left this facility, but both these men are considered extremely dangerous, and there is an all-out manhunt underway at this hour. Now, this first photo, Anthony Garver, he is 28. He stands 5'8", weighs 250 pounds, and was last seen wearing a brown faded sweatshirt and orange jail flip-flops. Garver is known to be a survivalist. He is said to be able to live in the woods for extended periods of time. He was originally arrested for murder, but was not competent to stand trial. Now, the second individual, the second fugitive, this is Mark Alexander Adams. He is 58 years old. He stands 6 feet tall, weighs 210 pounds, and was last seen in a white T-shirt and gray shorts. He was at the hospital for a domestic violence assault incident, but he ended up at Western State Hospital instead. Now, police believe that both of these men were together when they escaped. They may even have some money on them to help them facilitate staying under the radar. Taxi companies, public transit agencies, they've been notified to be on the lookout. And back here live, it is very important, if anyone sees either of these men or even suspects that they might be there, do not make contact with these guys. Call 911 with their location, and that is the best thing you can do for the public right now. Reporting live here outside Western State Hospital, Joel Marino, Como News.
Police are following up on their first major lead since his escape from Western State Hospital.
Investigators say this is Anthony Garver buying a bus ticket from Seattle to Spokane last night just before 9 p.m. Garver has a long criminal history in eastern Washington and may have been there as early as this morning. Another break in the case came this morning when officers captured the other fugitive, Mark Adams.
And now police are questioning Adams to see if he might have any information about what his fellow escapee is planning to do. KOMO's Mark Miller is live in Des Moines to explain how that part of the drama unfolded. Mark?
Well, of these two people, Garver by far has the more violent criminal history. And police say he's got survivalist skills, which means he might be able to better evade capture. But the fact that they caught this Adams guy right here near this church parking lot, that gives police an advantage because he just might have information that can lead them to escapee number 2. Police say these surveillance photos show 28-year-old Anthony Garver in Seattle late last night buying a bus ticket to Spokane under a fake name. Police consider him an extreme danger to the community, accused of murdering a woman in 2013, stabbing her 24 times before slitting her throat.
That's what's, making us really nervous is that, it's a pretty serious crime, obviously, the worst that you can imagine. And he's got mental illness, so we don't know what he's thinking.
And Garver's fellow escapee may have information that could help police capture escapee number 2. Adams was arrested this morning near a Des Moines church after an alert citizen recognized him from media coverage of the escape. Road worker Stanley Green watched it all unfold.
Saw a guy running across the parking lot coming from that way.
When Des Moines officers caught up with Adams, he put his hands up right away and everybody stayed real calm.
He kind of just didn't know resist, just kind of sat there and just kind of talked to him, and they put him in the car and then they kind of talked for a while and they all took off.
The men escaped together last night from Western State Hospital. Making it out a window, officials think they worked months to loosen. Both were committed after judges found them incompetent to stand trial on criminal charges. Adams was arrested for domestic violence in 2014. Garver is considered the more dangerous of the two. And police say he's got survivalist skills that could help him evade capture. Investigators hope that bus ticket to Spokane at least narrows down their search.
Just pray that they catch him soon.
Now, Garver doesn't sound stupid. When he bought that ticket, he used a fake name, he used cash, but police don't know if he actually got on the bus. So they've got authorities over there on alert. In fact, they've got a bulletin throughout the country. Live here in Des Moines, Mark Miller, KOMO News.
Scary business, Mark. Thank you. And these escapes raise serious questions about security and safety, both at the hospital and for the public at large. KOMO investigator Tracy Vetter discovered that despite the dangerous nature of these patients, they were housed in a ward with one of the lowest levels of supervision and security checks.
The most secure part of Western State Hospital is the forensic unit, which has much more robust security and looks more like a minimum security prison. But sources tell us that Mark Adams, originally charged with assault, and Anthony Garver, accused of murder, were housed in a general population ward, restrained only by locked doors and windows. DSHS spokesman Adolfo Capistani says the courts determine if someone is under a forensic or criminal commitment.
Does that mean that you couldn't have kept them in a more secure ward?
That's a good question. I don't have the details on that.
But even in a general ward, the investigators have found this internal document showing patients and their rooms, including the physical security of doors and windows, are supposed to be checked every hour. Police say the pair spent months working on the window to effect their escape, so how come no one noticed? Also, the hospital reports it discovered the two missing at 6:45. Capistani says they have no explanation for why it took an hour to notify Lakewood police.
If there was protocol that was not followed, we're going to make sure and look at that and find out why it didn't and take the measures to correct it.
The hospital is already under orders by the federal government to improve its health and safety by May 3rd, or it risks losing $60 million.
You failing to implement a quality management system.
State Senator Mark Belogia has been critical of the hospital for the same reasons. We reached him by phone in eastern Washington. He's disappointed, but not surprised by the escapes.
Until they get management that really wants to implement real quality and safety procedures, I expect more disasters to happen.
The investigators have also discovered this is the third serious event at Western in the past 2 weeks. A patient was accused of raping another patient, and a staff member had to be taken to the hospital after being attacked by a patient. Tracy Vetter, Como investigators.
Troubled Western State Hospital is getting a new leader. Today, the governor fired the hospital's CEO. The Como investigators have been exposing problems at Western State for months now, and John Humbert was there as the governor addressed the firing and talked about 4 patients who went missing last week. John?
Well, obviously, Eric Inslee said that this was brewing for some time. A serious issue surfaced through the months and years. The escape and walk away of those 4 patients last week was the end of it. From manhunts in the dark of night to stories of violence, beatings, and safety lapses, Western State Hospital has been on the brink. And Governor Inslee says no more.
These incidents have justifiably eroded public confidence in the hospital and my confidence.
So he fired Western CEO Ron Adler today. It's a move some staff have been calling for more than a year, telling us Adler brushed aside warnings from staff and hopes for change. Inslee agreed.
They did not have confidence that the CEO was going to be able to really bring them into the decision-making process.
Now he turns to Cheryl Strange, a former DSHS assistant director with a mental health background. She knows the 800-bed facility has to turn around.
Western State Hospital is not a 9-to-5 operation. It works round the clock.
24/7 without enough workers. DSHS says it can't fill around 150 positions as nurses and staff jump ship to higher-paying jobs.
They have just been on a skeleton crew, and they have not had enough people to do the job.
The governor did deflect criticism that hiring and firing managers may not be enough to shift a culture that led to staff attacks, an alleged patient rape, and a swine flu outbreak.
Well, let me reiterate, hiring a new CEO is not going to solve all the problems at this institution. Unless we are able to get enough people to work in this institution, we are going to have difficulties.
Now another opportunity for an institution in trouble to make things right.
Left in a cell with nowhere to turn, mental patients forced to wait months, even years in jail for a transfer to get treatment.
As Como investigator John Humbert found, patients go without help, and we all pay the price. John?
Well, this is not supposed to happen. It's against the law, even violates the Constitution. But when there's no room at the inn, so to speak, at Western State Hospital, prisoners are mixed with patients. The bonds between mother and son.
There's Nolan right there.
Brother and sister.
He was just a really good kid.
Aren't easily broken.
Had a wonderful time.
Unless it's a break no one can fix.
And it was about his junior or senior year where he just started, there were just little things that started to decline at that point.
Things just definitely declined. He is truly schizophrenic, and he needs medicine, and there is absolutely nothing that I can do.
Sandy and Lauren Flamini call Nolan an intelligent boy with a future as bright and as big as a smile. He's now a man who hasn't been given a chance to heal.
I want Nolan to be in a facility that can help him.
Nolan's normal high school angst took a darker turn in his late teens.
Treatment plans.
Family history and court records show that's when the schizophrenia took hold, when Sandy's mothering couldn't calm the mental anguish and violence brewing inside his mind. She had to put him out instead of risking more attacks in their Lacey home.
So I told Nolan that I would always be there for him. And so it's called tough love. And I had to do that.
While on the street in February, Nolan was arrested in Thurston County for smashing a post office window. His documented mental health history became the focus. Once a court orders a competency hearing, experts say patients should be evaluated in 7 days. For Nolan, it took 34.
We are not mental health professionals. We are corrections deputies and law enforcement officers.
Thurston County Sheriff John Snazza is blunt, frustrated that cities and counties must pick up the slack when patients like Nolan are in his jail.
They tend to act out because they are scared.
And that's not where they're supposed to be.
And that's not where they're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be at Western State Hospital. By court order, an inmate found mentally incompetent should be transferred to Western State within a week. Nolan's 7 days came and went. 14 people were ahead of him on the wait list. It was another 30 days before he finally got into Western.
DSHS has not been held accountable for not being able to provide the beds that they're required to by law.
Nolan isn't alone. SNAZA estimates 35 to 40% of his inmate population have significant mental health issues, but it takes most 45 to 60 days to get a bed at Western.
I don't want to tell them how to do it. That's their job.
DSHS says budgets and staffing shortages keep the agency from doing that job. The failure rings up another price tag, too. Records compiled by DSHS revealed that the mental health backlog cost counties and city jails more than $1.6 million every 6 months.
It isn't necessarily what it costs the sheriff, it's what it costs the community.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm so emotional.
I know, Mom, it's okay.
The battles continue for families like the Flaminis.
I'm probably going to cry, too.
Fighting for Nolan to get help he needs that judges, doctors, and loved ones say he deserves.
Well, they don't have enough room. They don't have the facilities, and they don't have the ability to properly evaluate these people and take care of them. And it's a quagmire.
Lawyers suing the state on behalf of patients over the 7-day deadlines head to court again later this month. Nolan is now in his second full week of treatment at Western State.
Western State Hospital is under federal watch. Since September, the troubled mental hospital has been struggling to keep millions of dollars in funding. Today, Governor Inslee agreed to give the feds more control over the hospital's fate. The deal also closes a dangerous gap in state law, first exposed by Como investigator John Humbert.
This is not the end. This is the beginning.
An upbeat Governor Jay Inslee flanked by new Western State Hospital CEO Cheryl Strange, talking about change coming to Western.
We've been trying to run this hospital on the cheap with not enough people, and it's unacceptable.
Thursday night, the hospital agreed to a new oversight plan with the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's a 13-month-long program forcing accountability and bringing reform to staff safety, patient care, recent escapes, and more. The system's improvement agreement also targets incidents like these: violence between staff and patients on both sides. In February, the Como investigators exposed a shocking gap in state law: no requirement to disclose these attacks to regulators. The state only had to tell the feds about deaths of patients while in restraints. Now that gap is closed. The hospital must report any violence within 24 hours.
People with mental illness can and do recover, and that this hospital is instrumental in that effort.
Western State Hospital is without accreditation. The bombshell revelation was discovered by the Como investigators as the troubled hospital fights to stay afloat. Investigator John Humbert joins us now with angry reactions from people who were kept in the dark.
This looked like corruption to me, and I treated it as such.
Paul Vilja wants the truth to be known about his workplace, Western State Hospital.
This doesn't happen in real life.
The mental health facility was outed today for failing to widely notify staff and the public that it was backing out of hospital accreditation.
Total blackout of all information.
The Joint Commission is a nonprofit organization that inspects and rates hospitals all across the country. That accreditation is an extra level of oversight and accountability to help hospitals get a gold standard. Instead, Western and Social and Health Services backed out 3 months ago and kept it quiet.
I don't know when this hospital is going to hit rock bottom.
State Senator Mark Milosha has tried to hold Western accountable in the past. He says this was a wrong decision, done the wrong way.
Reaches a level, I'm almost dare to say, almost corruption when you're being completely false on where your hospital stands on something this significant.
It's false, he says, because for months, from the governor on down, leaders knew their accreditation was over. No one bothered to tell frontline nurses, doctors, or unions. Western's website and job postings still declare the hospital is fully accredited. After we started asking questions, Western finally got it right. Now the Employment Security Division said it could investigate for the state hiring under false pretenses. If they're saying they're accredited and they're not in a job posting, what does that say to you?
It's fraud, and it's clear fraud.
DSHS said the focus has been on the federal agreement to reform and fix Western, saying we did not believe we could meet the Joint Commission accreditation standards. They had hoped leadership would trickle down the news to staff, which didn't happen, and admitted that the online errors were an unintentional oversight. Milosha wants to know more.
What else are they hiding? It's scary but they need to come clean.
There will be pushback.
Bilger just wants his work to be the best it can be. Repair Western.
Leaving accreditation may be a precedent-setting event.
But do it the right way, instead of in the shadows. John Humbert, Como Investigators.
A frustrated nurse at Western State Hospital found a sweet way to vent her frustration and quit her job at the same time. Como investigator John Humbert has a story of a resignation that really takes the cake. John?
Yeah, you had to see that one coming. It was a resignation unlike anything we've seen before, created with one part absurdity and one part sobering reality. As this former insider speaks out, her experience matches this consultant's harsh assessment of Western's woes. Okay, yes, it's a cake.
Vanilla.
But it's so much more. A way for Sarah Childers to say, I quit, and deliver a statement.
I'm not the type of person that's going to shut up, and I'm not the type of person that's going to not do anything.
Western State Hospital is in crisis.
Such a large institution that could do so much good, and it's just one of the worst places right now.
Childers resigned last week, but sent the cake as a goofy goodbye to her co-workers. During just 7 months on the job at Western, she found leadership focused more on infractions and punishment for staff than healing patients.
You can lead from any chair. It's just where your heart is.
That observation is echoed in this 3-page report from a consultant hired by the feds to evaluate the hospital.
How do we control the population with such little staff and so many patients, and you can't have individualized treatment that way.
The report obtained by the Como investigators agreed, stating that consultants observed patients receiving minimal treatment and that some patients yelled and screamed without staff paying attention. Even problems using gloves and washing hands. Overall, when to do what is not clear. Training is also lacking. The report noting many assessments were incomplete and that they are not following their own policy on seclusion and restraint.
Staff, they feel unheard and unappreciated. They're not being supported.
Childers says she can't wait for the feds to force the turnaround. She's off to another hospital in Oregon, leaving her mark on Western.
I said it's freedom of speech, yeah.
Now, the consultant reports will now help keep Western on pace to make fixes for training, policy, and safety. John Humbert, Como Investigators.